Hello, good welcome and evening. I recently paid a visit to Old Oak Common, courtesy of the good people at High Speed 2. Old Oak Common is a brand new station in West London that, when it is completed, is to serve High Speed 2, the Elizabeth Line, the North London Line of the Overground, the Heathrow Express, and the Great Western Main Line. Now, the name Old Oak Common has a long history in railway circles. It used to be a major locomotive depot in steam days, where the Great Western Railway housed the locomotives that hauled the big expresses out of Paddington. Here could be found such magnificent classes as the Saints, the Stars, the Castles, and the Kings, as well as many less glamorous engines that worked around London. Later, the site would house diesel locomotives as well as the luxurious Blue Pullman sets, and later the Intercity 125s. Old Oak Common Station is being built on part of the old depot site, and there are depot facilities for the Great Western Railway, no relation to the original company of that name, and the Elizabeth Line. This was a good place to build a locomotive depot because, at the time, it was in the middle of nowhere. There was very little here in the early 20th century when the railway came along, or at least nothing too expensive. Siting the depot closer to Paddington would have entailed extensive demolition, and no doubt upset many members of the aristocracy. This is one of the frequent comments I hear about Old Oak Common. Not that it's upsetting to the aristocracy, but that it is, well, in the middle of nowhere. Or at least in a suburb that doesn't seem like a natural location for a transport hub. In many ways it's an awkward site for a station, particularly a large one. The roads are fairly narrow, and as well as existing train depots, there's a canal and housing to contend with. And large is what this station will be. It doesn't look like much now, but here are the visualizations. It will be 850 metres long, or 930 yards, covering 10 hectares. There will be 14 platforms, 6 below ground, dedicated to high-speed services, and 8 for everything else. The main purpose of the station is as an interchange rather than a destination. It's not being built because there's a pressing need for thousands of people to get to Old Oak Common, but because it's a convenient place for lines to meet up. As I say, there are several different lines converging here. Via the GWR line, it will be possible to get to places like Bristol, Cardiff, Swansea, Plymouth and Exeter. Via the Heathrow Express, international destinations. And via the Overground, Islington. The road at the front is to be deepened to allow double-decker buses, which will feed into the station from the local area. The construction is rather interesting. Basically, it's an enormous concrete box. What happened was that they built the walls, then they sank them into the ground, then they sank a load of pilings in, then they started digging it out. Then concrete slabs go in, then they will turn it from a big empty box into a proper station, which will look like this. Now, of course, there's a bit of a question mark over Old Oak Common, and I must emphasise that this video is my own commentary, my own opinions. They do not represent those of anyone working on High Speed 2 or any of the railways that will serve it. Yada yada yada, you know the drill. The original plan was for this to be an intermediate station. After this, tunnels would be dug for the 4.5 miles to Euston, where High Speed 2 would actually terminate. The tunnel boring machines will come through this wall and then go all the way to central London. Meanwhile, per the original plan, the line would go north to Birmingham, then on to Leeds and Manchester. Except High Speed 2 as a whole has gone ridiculously over budget, as rail projects tend to. There are all sorts of reasons for this, which I will not be going into here, but the long and short of it was that in 2021 the Leeds leg was cancelled. Then it looked like the Old Oak Common to Euston leg would be cancelled. Then this autumn the Birmingham to Manchester leg was officially cancelled, and the Euston extension was back on. So here's the problem. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, which my autocorrect keeps changing to Sunk, no comment, announced that the extension to Euston would be reliant on private investment. The comparison drawn was Nine Elms and Battersea Power Station, where the underground branch was paid for in substantial part by private investment. I think this is a bad comparison, and I'll tell you for why. Battersea had no underground connection, so a new line was a good investment for the developers. It drove up the value of their property. The Jubilee Line extension was also paid for in part by private investment, because it would provide connections to the new office development at Canary Wharf. It's not clear what investors are supposed to get from investing in the extension. Euston is already very well connected. In fact, from Old Oak Common it's only a short walk to Willesden Junction, where there's already an overground service to Euston. Are companies in Birmingham supposed to invest because people can commute from London, or vice versa? Are developers around Euston supposed to kick in the billions it will cost to get the tunnel built? It all seems rather flawed to me. But abandoning the Euston extension is, in my mind, an even bigger folly. Now, contrary to popular belief, the aim of High Speed 2 is not to speed up journeys between London and Birmingham, but to free up space on the West Coast Main Line. Nevertheless, the way it has been sold to the public is on reduced journey time from city centre to city centre. If the public have to make their way to Old Oak Common, then that convenience and reduction in journey time is lost. Meanwhile, there's another problem. Old Oak Common is due to open in 2026. Euston will not be opening in 2026. Regardless of whether the extension goes ahead, there will be a period when people will have to change trains at Old Oak Common. A lot of those people will be changing onto the Elizabeth line, which runs right through central London. So the Lizzie needs more trains, and for that it needs more money. But at the time of recording, the government are being vague as to whether they're willing to supply that money. So really, who knows what's going to happen? The general impression I get is that the government are hiding under the desk, sobbing to themselves and hoping it all goes away. As for High Speed 2, they are proceeding as planned. The official government position is that Euston is going ahead. Therefore, the tunnel boring machines are being brought in, and until they hear different, the plan is to dig. Personally, I think they should just go rogue and build the tunnel anyway, but apparently that's not an option. So that's Old Oak Common. It's about the only part of High Speed 2 in London that remains fairly certain. It's on course to open in 2026, and I think it's all rather exciting, even if the chaps in Westminster don't. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I would like to thank my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon, and here on YouTube for your much appreciated support. You are the TBM to my Euston extension. I would also like to thank the people at High Speed 2 for inviting me along, allowing me to film and supplying me with many of the images and bits of footage in this video. And I will see you all again very soon. Cheerio.